Suppose further on from that video I made about the no proof of the aliens visiting Earth in the past, how did they build the pyramids, how did they do this? Well, just because we can't build them today doesn't mean that we could not build them in the past. The thing is that, you see, what happens is we tend to apply our understandings of technology and mechanics and infrastructure and organizational ideas upon ancient people. And it's too terrifying for the establishment to do that, because then they have to realize that ancient people were actually probably more intelligent than we were in lots of ways, technically advanced too. And that blows Darwinism up. And also the fact that a lot of these things take place in parts of the world that are not Europe and so on. It upsets the kind of like these royal families and these bloodlines who are all white, from European nobility, Prussians and this kind of thing, who push the Darwinism on us because they think that this is why they love lions. They think they're the hunter and we're all the prey. But the thing is, again, we're missing the point. I think, now, this is just an opinion, okay? And this could be bullshit just as much as anything else. This is just my opinion, right? I have a strong suspicion they use sound. I have a very strong suspicion they use sound. And there's also something about quartz, but that's a different thing. But in terms of quarrying the stones, they absolutely had to have had some kind of machinery. Some kind of machine. People say, well, where are the machines now? Where is the lathes? Where is the cutting tools? Where is that? Well, you know, if you take say a really high-end skill or Bosch circular saw, a stone cutting circular saw, an angle grinder, and you leave that out in the weather, I guarantee you, within 10 years, there'll be nothing left of that except a bit of iron on the ground, iron filings. On my property, there's a wood behind it, and when I bought the property, there was a shed, and inside the shed was a Mini, an Austin Mini from the early 1970s. It wasn't working anymore, and about 2000, there was a big hurricane, and the shed roof was blown off. It's not my property; it was someone else's property. But the roof was blown off the shed, and it's all gone. Everything. That's just in 15, 18 years. The Morris Minor, which was intact, it's except for the glass windscreen, and even that's all smashed and falling apart. But all the metal bits are gone. Even the engine block. I also threw out a Stanley range, an Aga, that was pure solid iron enamel that didn't work anymore because it was a big crack down the middle. It was an old one, about 50 years old. I threw that in the field, the woods behind the house. That's gone, dissolved. So then they say, well, where are the tools that made the pyramids? You trying to tell me that the tools would have lasted 5,000-6,000 years if the ones in my backyard don't even last 2 decades? So this is nonsense that we should find the tools. Even on the Mini, the rubber is gone on the tires. It's been eaten away by bacteria and everything. And the vinyl on the seats, the sponge inside the seats, gone, eaten away. And I saw it in real time, bacteria and everything eaten into it. If a part of that Mini was made from stone, well, I guess the glass really is glass being a kind of stone when you think about it. That's the only thing left is the windscreens, because it's a kind of stone. It's a mineral, ultimately, sand, silica. And so it's the same thing with the ancient world. Why don't we find anything other than stone? Because everything else is rotted away. Even plastics rot away in enough time. That's a myth that plastics take thousands of years to dissolve. They don't. Anyone you go to the house, if your parents still live in the house you grew up in, you can remember all the toys that you'd lost in the garden, from plastic soldiers all the way up to everything, little metal die-cast cars are all gone. You never find them. They are all dissolved or eaten away by bacteria. And also the change in season does it as well. It smashes them up, makes them brittle. So we would not find the tools if they had like machine tools. Well, they must have had to drill some of the holes you see in the stones in places like Egypt. They have to have had tools. Now, where are they? They're dissolved. These things are so fantastically old. They're much older than they're telling us. Just because and you can see that by the hieroglyphs. The hieroglyphs you'll see these beautifully machined stones and everything, and then you'll see these very crude hieroglyphs on top of it from the dynastic and pharaonic Egypt. There was a previous Egypt. There was a pre-pharaonic Egypt where all the real high technology stuff existed. And it existed all over the world. That's why we don't find the machines. All we find is stone, because stone lasts, especially in an environment where there's not much rainfall. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if when the Stonehenge circle was completed, that those stones probably had perfect sides and perfect cut angles, maybe even had designs on them, and they've just been weathered away. Just been weathered. You know, they've had 5,000 years out there. You see what the weather can do, rainfall. And it makes you wonder about what we've lost because of that. Because you need to maintain things. Man-made things need to be maintained. That's why they had to rebuild Stonehenge in the 1950s. Because it was falling over, it was dangerous. And that's why they had to set the stones on the concrete bases below them just to hold them. Because they were being blown over by wind and everything. The most famous one was being the travellers lit a fire next to one, and the main stone in the circle fell over. So they're very fragile. So that's the reason why we don't find machines: time and decay. If there were traditional machines like we're used to in our technological infrastructure. Now another one is, I think, I'm just throwing this out there, okay? It doesn't mean I absolutely believe it, but I have a strong suspicion that they use sound. And how do I know this? Well, you know my background is in electronics, and I used to have jobs like doing things like repairing and speakers and stuff like that. And you would use things called the signal generator, which was like an amplifier that had a tone and a tone output on it, and it would go from like 20 hertz all the way lower, like 10 hertz all the way to 50,000 hertz, and it was for testing speakers. Or it also would send out an electronic tone for other things, for testing components. And if you had a big say 12-inch speaker, that's not even big. If you had an 18-inch speaker, and if you just sat it up on the workbench facing up, and you put that on playing at a tone like below, like just below human hearing, 20, 18, 19 hertz, and if you put a sizable weight like a large steel ball bearing, the vibration in the diaphragm of the speaker would raise it. Now you're talking about paper with a small electronic signal lifting something that weighs a couple of pounds. So that's bear in mind, that can be done. If you get a piece of paper and you put it on a table and blow in directly into it, holding the sides, it amplifies and modulates like a sine wave, just like a sound wave. That's what it is. The paper rattling, paper making that shape. That's the actual sine wave. That's the attack and the decay of the way it cycles. Now, again, if you put something on there that's quite heavy, you'll be amazed at how you humming will elevate it. So it's not unfeasible that they develop some kind of technology, like maybe using trumpets, maybe using mass choirs, maybe on a signal that would be built up like a magical ritual, where they've got to move a 300-ton stone, and they would all stand there and they would do it under firelight, and they would make sure it was a full intensity. And then a high priest or a shaman would give a signal, and everyone would go, whoa, or blow into a an alpine horn kind of sound. And there was maybe some kind of cloth or some kind of fabric underneath the stone that starts vibrating, the stone starts lifting, and then fellas at the front pull it, and the guys at the back followed going, it becomes a ceremonial thing. See, this is a huge part of the engineering today don't understand. The idea of a ceremony can actually inspire people to do things greater than what they can normally do. And that's what makes me think that sound on some, or they've developed some kind of machine that somehow used sound. It used sound. And that's how they moved those giant stones. How they carved them. In some cases, like you see, like some of the things they show you in Egypt, like fellas carving them with stone balls. So you can't get sharp edges like that with a stone ball. On a long straight line, you have that constant checks, and also you see there's clearly on many of those stones there's evidence of machine marks. When you buy the cheapest lumber from the lumber yard, and you see the saw cuts in the wood, you'll see those similar kind of saw cuts grains in the stone, like the stone has been cut, and this kind of thing. They probably would have also found ways to amplify light, maybe to act like lasers. It can be done. If you have enough sunshine, it can be done. There's so much technology they could have used, because it would not have necessarily been, well, it definitely would have been alien, but that's how they did it. And of course, what happened was, you hear me talk about this all the time, I'm not the only one. Something happened and it was a reset. There was either a comet, or a flood, or a pandemic, something, and human beings were knocked back to zero, and the knowledge was lost, except for probably things like the Vatican and some other people, this kind of thing. And all we have left are places like Baalbek and Giza and the Mexican pyramids and Easter Island statues. Like the Easter Island statues, there's the infamous, stupid documentary. It's pure gaslighting. The National Geographic scientists moving them with ropes. But what it was plaster over styrofoam, and they only did it from the chest up. It wasn't a piece of heavy granite or whatever, it's a basalt, whatever those statues are made from, and they go all the way down to their feet, and on them is a plinth. This is the thing. You see these. There's one video where you see this gentleman moving blocks of stone, and he make kind of ball bearings out of little stone ball bearings, and they're showing you don't need magic or aliens in order to move these huge pieces of stone. This man does it with like small ball bearings. If you look at him doing that, it's in perfect laboratory conditions. The stone is on tarmac. The stones themselves are perfectly straight. They're all machined. It's the most perfect laboratory conditions. Okay, fair enough. Let's see him do that at some of the sites in Sardinia, where you have even bigger stones than what he had, were quarried at the bottom of a mountain and then built into a neuralgic temple on top of the mountain. Show me that. Show me your smugness then. And all these fellas, all these Egypts on the comments going, well, that's science, these types, Science motherfuckers, those types, But in perfect laboratory conditions. You show me them doing that in at the top of the pyramids. Maybe you can move 2 blocks of stone and maneuver them in a small area in a perfectly flat surface. Try doing that on sand. Let me see him use the ball bearings on sand. And then there's nonsense of them floating the stones down the Nile because they've travelled from miles and miles away. Like the blue stones at Stonehenge, they pulled them down from the mountain and then they put them on a raft. And when they tried to recreate it in the 1970s, they had a thing that was like a small concrete block. It'd be smaller than any of the stones at Stonehenge, the blue stones at Stonehenge. They put it on a raft to prove that it could be flowed down the River Severn around the coast. It immediately sunk, and it was smaller than anything in Stonehenge. It immediately sunk and it's still down there. They use sound. They use sound or something like that. And they never seem to ask why did they pick those particular stones. Because, you've heard me talking, like my loads of megalithic work I've done, there was a specific energetic resonance to do with quartz and other minerals, and maybe even other kind of like ability to record information in specific types of stones that ancient people who were not bombarded with electromagnetic pollution were more attuned with than us. And the nearest thing we got to that was people like Michelangelo in the Renaissance, when he when he'd go to the quarry and they'd have the big piece of Carrara marble, and he would look at it and goes, okay, if there's a statue of Moses in there. And people would say, how do you know? I said, I just know. I just feel it. And he'd be caressing the stone. And then he would use his hammer and chisel and render out the most magnificent statue of Moses or whatever was going to be in there. He was the nearest thing in the modern age as someone who understood that there was a power in stone that was not... It was beyond supernatural. It was superhuman in terms of what our engineering would be. Very few things we make today will last. I mean, it does. One of the things does worry me is where everything on media now is digital, and all it takes is one computer virus or a comet to the right amount of electromagnetic pulse, and all the digital information is gone. Right, it's all gone. All your photographs, all the music, everything that's exclusively digital is gone, and then all the other stuff that's like traditional media, paper, vinyl, cassettes, tape, that will all decay as well very quickly. And if a comet happened tomorrow and say knocked out most of the human race or something like that, or a pandemic, you'd be looking at the only thing that would probably last in a couple of 100 years would be bronze. Everything else would just decay. It's remarkable how quickly nature will take it over. And then you would say things. Then in 5,000 years' time or 10,000 years' time, someone would find a piece of a heat sink, which a ceramic heat or a ceramic capacitor, or a ceramic heat sink from a piece of computer, or something along those lines. And they would say a large ceramic heat sink from a mainframe computer. And they would say, oh, look, what was this for? It seems to be for cooling some kind of machine. And they would say, well, where's the machine? Where is it? And that's the argument they're applying to ancient Egypt. It all decayed. It's as simple as that, and everywhere else. And that's why they don't want you knowing this, because, as I said, it kills the Darwin thing. It wrecks the Darwin thing. And also They don't like the idea of them. The ones that the establishment now sees themselves as the Homo superior. Not only are they the smartest people now, but they're the smartest people that ever lived. And if you're an atheist, that makes you a kind of a god. And they're all either atheist or Abrahamic, so they see themselves as either been chosen by God to be the greatest people in the world right now, or they are a kind of a secular god because they're so intelligent and clever. And for someone to point out, well, maybe in the past there was very clever humans, this is the most horrifying thing they can hear, because it directly challenges their own ego assumptions about themselves. And this is why they're perfectly happy letting you have all the ancient alien shows you want. I mean, I did a show years ago with Alan Watt, and it was a very good show too. And we talked about, the theme was the alien psyop, and he was talking about, and he made the great, and I was coming from the Hollywood point of view, that they pushed all the stuff in your head through Hollywood at the same time the Cold War was going on. But he was talking about Eric von Daniken, and he made a great point. He said, this guy, to get someone on the market with books to sell in that numbers, and to have him going all around, I remember when the kids seeing him on the top TV show in Ireland. And I have to say, at the time, it fascinated and intrigued me. And you need a serious budget behind you. Who's paying for this? Who wants Eric von Daniken out there? Who wants this idea out there that the ancient humans were monkeys that needed aliens? It's just like the same thing. It's the same. They were all monkeys because they weren't. The Bible said so or something. It was Adam and Eve. This also blows that stuff up as well. And it suits them. It suits them very, very well. The whole thing that we had to have aliens do, and that's why they never challenge it, and that's why it's been on cable since cable TV started. We've been bombarded with it. Now, I'd be the first to say there are good things to what Eric von Daniken did. I spoke about this recently on Legalized Freedom with Greg Moffat. Despite all the bullshit, his approach, even though he was deliberately pushing the alien thing, got a lot of people to think about, no, the historic timeline isn't right. And most of us wouldn't know around the world. A lot of people wouldn't know around the world today about the complexity of these ancient structures if it wasn't for that. So they kind of shot themselves in the foot as well. They thought we were either going to say it's aliens or it's bullshit. But they didn't think there was going to be a third tangent would come up. You see, they're always messing up in many ways. That a third tangent would be, were humans in the past much more intelligent? And why are they not intelligent now? And that bothers them. That greatly bothers them. No aliens required.